Welcome back to True Crime with Johnny. Today's case is Elliot Rodger, the Virgin Killer. He was self-described as the Supreme Gentleman. He went on a killing spree because he couldn't attract the attention of women. Let's get into the case.
I'm 22 years old and still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl. You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it.
Elliot Rodger was born in London, England on July 24th, 1991. His father was Peter Rodger, an Englishman, photographer, and also worked in the entertainment industry. He was the assistant director on the Hunger Games as well as other movies. His mother was Malaysian Chinese. Her name was Lee Chin, and she was a nurse on production sets. Elliot grew up privileged in London. The Rodger family had a long history of wealth, but they fell into hard times and lost their money. And at the age of 5, Peter Rodger, Elliot's father, decided to move the family to Los Angeles so that he could be closer to the entertainment industry. Elliot Rodger had kept a journal, and he recalls back when he was 5 years old, the excitement on the plane coming to America. According to Elliot's mother, he had high-functioning autism and Asperger's, and he showed many symptoms like repeating himself, fussy with food. He had trouble with social situations, and people on the internet don't like that, but it's just a fact that he had those symptoms. But he arrived in Los Angeles, and he moved to a suburb of Los Angeles, Woodland Hills, and he was of a privileged background. They sent him to a private school in Topanga Canyon, and he did not get along well with the people there. He also didn't participate in extracurricular activities like sports. He was shy and withdrawn, and he was socially awkward, and he had difficulty making friends. And also, he was entitled, and he was spoiled. He got whatever he wanted. When his family moved into a new home after his father became a little bit more successful, Elliot demanded to live in the master bedroom, and his father relented. He let him do it. Everything revolved around Elliot, and he was always concerned with what people thought of him. In fact, he had dyed his hair blonde when he was a kid because he thought the other kids would think he was cool. And there's an indication that he suffered with an identity crisis because of his biracial background. He was trying to fit in with the white kids in school, and he realized that he was from a mixed race background. He was so insecure that he recalls in his journals having his dad bring him to a hair salon to dye his hair blonde in hopes with fitting in with the kids, the white kids. Elliot switched from school to school to school. He had horrible grades, and he was just an entitled person. He thought everything should be handed to him. He didn't like the school. He would immediately ask to be withdrawn from it. Before the age of 9 years old, he had been to 4 or 5 schools. He went to the Dorset House Boys School. He went to Pinecrest School in Los Angeles, Topanga Elementary, and he just, if anything became tough, he would quit. He tried to get on the basketball team, and it didn't go well, and right away he quit, and his parents let him do it. Also at this early age, according to his journal, he realized there were cool kids and uncool kids, and he realized he was uncool, and he didn't like the way his parents dressed him, and he started to develop a fixation with white, blue-eyed, blonde girls, and he always called them girls, and he wrote hundreds of pages worth of journals, and that's all he talked about were white, blue-eyed, blonde girls. When Elliot was about 12 years old, he developed a crush on a 10-year-old girl named Monette Moya, and she would later become a blonde, blue-eyed model, what he always preferred. And he wrote in his journal, and he would bash her, and he called her that cruel bitch. And she was 9-10 years old. And this is the mind of Elliot Rodger. He thought that this young girl should run into his arms. He called her a bully. But according to her father, she was 9-10 years old, a petite little girl. How could she bully this 12, almost 13-year-old boy? Things would not get any better from here, and Elliot's parents got divorced, and he went to live on the weekdays with his mother and his younger sister, and he recalls never getting along with his younger sister. He hated her. He looked at her as competition, and he did have one friend that was a girl at this young age, and he would later hate her, and she represented what he did want, which was she was blonde and blue eyes, and their parents were friends. But there was a situation where she started to play more with Elliot's sister, the PlayStation game console that they had to share, and Elliot recalls in his journal becoming enraged by this. Her name was Maddie Humphreys, and she would be Elliot's only female friend he ever had. In fact, when they were children, according to Elliot, they used to bathe together. Elliot would spend his early teenage years in a virtual world. He was completely engulfed in the game World of Warcraft. He became a very prestigious player, according to him and others, in this virtual world. And that's where he spent most of his time, with his friends and playing online. But he came to realize somewhere in the middle teens that this was an imaginary world, that this did not translate into real world success, which he wrote in his journal. The reoccurring theme, though, in Elliot's life was girls, and therefore he lost interest in the games in the virtual world like World of Warcraft because he was so concerned with the mathematics of how to get a woman, and that's how he looked at people. Everything was your height, your weight, how good looking you were. Everything was a social score to Elliot. This brings us to the Diaries of Elliot Rodger. He started on April 5th, 2010, and there were two different journals. And they give us a really good insight into the mind and his personal thoughts and how skewed he was and how much he just did not understand people and he couldn't relate to people. And again, we don't know if this is because of his autism or the speculation of his autism. I'm not going to read every passage in the hundreds of pages of what Elliot Rodger wrote because 95% of it is just repetition. But I'm going to include a few passages to give an indication on what it was like in Elliot Rodger's head. April 21st, 2010. What awkward, perplexing times these are. My 19th birthday approaches and I am still stuck and confused. My 19th birthday, exclamation point. I can hardly believe it. Just 14 years ago, I arrived in the United States as a carefree child full of life and happiness. Just 9 years ago, I graduated from 5th grade with smiles and laughter. What went wrong? What went wrong? I slipped and fell off the right path of life into one of agonizing darkness. Or maybe I was shoved. I've included the next passage because I think it gives us a good indication on Elliot's thoughts of girls and when this whole thing started. July 19th, 2010. Out of the 19 years I've lived on this world, 5 have been a torment full of unfulfilled desires. I remember the start of this dreadful period of my life all too well. I never used to get along with girls very well. Even as a child, they were always cold and bitchy towards me, and not one ever befriended me. Before I hit puberty, though, that wasn't much of a problem. But then the day came, the day my manhood would stir at the sight of a hot girl, the day I first started touching myself late at night while fantasizing about making love. The next couple segments I'm going to read out of Elliot's journal really highlight the building rage inside of Elliot when he sees a young couple out and he's by himself. It just infuriates him. You can also get an indication of the pretentiousness of Elliot. I mean, he really believes that blonde women should just walk up to him and drop their clothes. I started to want girls. I started to yearn for companionship. I knew that couldn't be, though. I realized I could never be good enough for them. How heartbreaking that was. I would see young couples my age kissing and fondling each other in public. Such a lovely display of affection, and I would feel confused, then sad and angry at the fact that I could never have such pleasure. I could never have such beautiful, heavenly pleasure because I just didn't measure up to other boys my age. I was the weakling, the little runt, the weird kid. Boys always made fun of me, and girls would tease me. That hurt me the most. I felt so out of place, so lost, separate from the rest of humanity. I hid in a virtual world, and I tried hard to forget about it. Pain has been my life for the past few years, but what I've seen at this college has only fanned the flames. Couples or lovers have always angered me when I spot them in public, but that is only once in a while, like when I go to the mall occasionally. At this college, though, I see them everywhere, and when I walk past them and look at them, they seem to notice my envy and smile at me. It probably gives them pleasure, the foul beasts. It's so hurtful. These were a couple segments from his journals, just so you could get an idea of what goes through Elliot's brain when he's writing. He also gets angrier and angrier as the journal goes on. There's hundreds of pages, but really it's just the same topic. And he was a spoiled kid who's now a spoiled adult. He was handed everything, but he's not extremely wealthy like a lot of these Pacific Palisades, Malibu kids. Elliot is going to have to get a line of work if he's to succeed. Elliot did have an interest in writing and maybe creating a novel. He did research on the internet, and people wrote that it's hard to be a writer, so he became discouraged. Elliot reading from his journal on the subject of becoming a writer. I've just been reading articles on the internet about becoming a writer. All these articles just put me down. They're full of negative defeatists talking about how hard it is to even make a living as a writer. And everyone says that thousands of writers struggle to even get their books published. Only 1 in a million would get rich from writing a story. No. This is making me feel so hopeless. I have a brilliant story to write. But what if so many others have tried to sell their brilliant stories and failed? How can I get rich from writing my story over so many unsuccessful authors who have so much more writing experience than me? This is a fucking nightmare. This is hell. Elliot then thought the only way to do it was to get rich quick, and he was going to play Mega Millions lottery, and I'm going to include a passage from that, and also that he felt he was above manual labor and work. He thought, and according to his father in an interview, that Elliot felt entitled, that he should just be handed everything. Elliot's passage on the lottery. As I walk, I would think about my future and my hopes and dreams. It is a very soothing experience, and it helps me strengthen my belief that I am destined to win the Mega Millions lottery and become a young multi-millionaire. I feel more and more confident with life as I think about this. I feel a great surge of excitement when I imagine how happy and perfect my life will be once I've won the Mega Millions jackpot. I will be able to fully indulge in everything I am passionate about. Exotic cars, luxurious mansions, expensive clothes, and of course, sex with beautiful girls. I will drive a Maserati and a Lamborghini, and when girls see me in these cars, they will all want to date me. They will finally see me as the supreme man that I am meant to be. When I purchase a huge, beautiful mansion and take girls to it, they will be in love. I just know it. Once this all comes to fruition, I will finally lose my virginity. I will be able to make sex. Sex. No more lonely nights of masturbating. Needless to say, Elliot did not win the lottery, and he did not win the Mega Millions. And his friends, seeing how distressed he was about a girlfriend, suggested maybe he see a prostitute. But Elliot was just completely disgusted by that thought. And this is a passage that he wrote on it in his journal. Earlier this year, I was seriously considering hiring an escort or prostitute to help me with my sexual desires. I do have very strong sexual desires, which put me in agony instead of harmony, because I can never satisfy such desires. Philip was the one who suggested I hire a prostitute, that insolent little lout. I hate it when people view me as such a loser and suggest that I hire a whore. I hate it. They pity me. That's why they fucking pity me. That is the sickening truth. After months of consideration, I came to realize that if I do hire a prostitute to take my virginity, I will be hurt forever, because I will know that she will only be pleasuring me because I am paying her for the service. It is a prostitute's job, and she will pleasure any client. A prostitute wouldn't want to fuck me. She would just see me as one of her many duties of her job. But that is the only way I will ever be able to have sex, isn't it? Because no real girl will ever want to have sex with me and my small dick. Along with being delusional and entitled, Elliot had a far more sinister defect of character, and he was cruel to animals, specifically dogs. Serial killers such as Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Gary Ridgway, John Wayne Gacy, and the Boston Strangler, they all started with being cruel to animals and torturing and killing them. The following clip shows Elliot being cruel to this small chihuahua, and he really seems to get off on it. He's wearing a heavy-duty glove, and he just keeps taunting this dog. Obviously, this dog doesn't want to be bothered by Elliot, and it's not Elliot's dog, so he's defensive. And Elliot just keeps smacking him with this glove. And then he just does that sinister laugh that he does, and he eventually picks up the dog. But cruelty to animals is the first sign someone's going to be a killer, and Elliot has that, obviously. Elliot received a book called The Law of Attraction, The Secret, and it's another lottery scenario for Elliot. Just like, oh, I'm going to get rich quick and the lottery and my life's going to be perfect. It's the same thing with this book, The Secret, The Law of Attraction. The book basically, think positively about yourself, your life will come together. But faith without works is dead, and Elliot just wants everything handed to him, and this book is just another example of that. Elliot bounces around aimlessly in the Calabasas area. He's living in his mother's apartment, and he then decides on June 4th, 2011, to give college another try. He moves up to Isla Vista, an area outside of Santa Barbara, to Santa Barbara Community College. Elliot moves into an apartment with several male college students, but he spends most of his time video vlogging and writing in his journal. The following clip demonstrates the arrested development of Elliot. He sounds like a small child complaining about how unfair life is.
Hey, Elliot Rodger here. Today I'm at Sarania Park. My parents used to always take me here when I was a kid. Back when my life was happy and fair. Back when I thought the world was fair. How naive I was. And now, here I am. After living a horrible, unjust life. A wasted youth, deprived of any sort of fun or enjoyment or pleasure, all because females were never attracted to me. Right now I'm wearing my Hugo Boss shirt. It's one of my favorite button-down shirts. This is a shirt I wore to the premiere of The Hunger Games. I look fabulous.
It should also be noted that Elliot is considered an incel, an involuntarily celibate, a group of men online on the internet, in forums and chat rooms. And Elliot participates with these individuals and their hatred for women and their inability to get girlfriends. Elliot's anger continues to boil over, and he can no longer contain himself. He actually threw a drink on a young couple he saw out in public, and he decides the only way for him to get a girlfriend, his last-ditch effort, is to go to one of these big fraternity parties. And one night, drunk Elliot stumbles into a fraternity house, and there are women and men everywhere partying, and he's dressed to the nines, wearing his Gucci glasses, his Hugo Boss shirt, his designer clothing. He drove up in his BMW, and he comes into the party, but nobody pays attention to him, and he's furious at this. Elliot, in a drunken stupor, wanders upstairs at the party, out onto a ledge on the second story, and he sees two young girls chatting it up with some guy. And Elliot sits down there, and he's furious. Nobody pays attention. Nobody notices him. So he decides to shove these two girls off of the ledge. Elliot is unable to shove them off the ledge. Instead, these two guys at the party notice. They came over and they threw Elliot off the second-story ledge, and he fell and fractured his ankle. And as he stumbles away, he realizes he forgot his Gucci glasses. In a drunken stupor, he hobbles back, bangs on the door, but he's at the wrong house. These guys come out, he gets belligerent, and they beat the crap out of him. And Elliot hobbles away, angry as he was, and he comes up at that point with the day of retribution, the day he is going to kill every beautiful blonde at every one of those sorority houses, and he's going to mow down everyone he sees. And this is the beginning of the end, the day of retribution. One night following this incident, Elliot was up very late and drunk, planning his day of retribution, and he damaged his laptop computer. The following day, he goes to Best Buy for them to repair it. And as he awaits, he notices a firing range across the street where he went and shot guns. And he realized then, as he shot the gun, he felt immense power, because all his life he had felt weak. And with those guns in his hand, he felt empowered. And he decided soon after that to go purchase several Glock handguns. As Elliot continued to plan his day of retribution, he also continued to video vlog and upload videos to YouTube. And one of these videos got the attention of his mother and a friend, and they sent the police over to Elliot's apartment to check on him, to do a welfare check. And the police, when they saw Elliot at the apartment, Elliot, who could be charming if he wanted to be, came out and he played it down. And according to the police, he was just a well-mannered gentleman. And according to Elliot, he realized if they would have went into his bedroom, they would have found several Glock handguns and his journal describing the day of retribution. But they never went into that bedroom, and the plan for Elliot's day of retribution would continue. The following video is Elliot's last video upload before he commits his spree killing in Isla Vista.
Hi, Elliot Rodger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity, against all of you. For the last 8 years of my life, ever since I've hit puberty, I've been forced to endure an existence of loneliness, rejection, and unfulfilled desires, all because girls have never been attracted to me. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. I'm 22 years old, and I'm still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl. I've been through college for 2.5 years. More than that, actually. And I'm still a virgin. It has been very torturous. College is the time when everyone experiences those things such as sex and fun and pleasure. But in those years, I've had to rot in loneliness. It's not fair. You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me. but I will punish you all for it. It's an injustice, a crime, because I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy. And yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men, instead of me, the supreme gentleman. I will punish all of you for it. On the day of retribution, I am going to enter the hottest sorority house of UCSB. And I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut I see inside there. All those girls that I've desired so much, they would have all rejected me and looked down upon me as an inferior man if I ever made a sexual advance towards them, while they throw themselves at these obnoxious brutes. I'll take great pleasure in slaughtering all of you. You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one, the true alpha male. Yes. After I've annihilated every single girl in the sorority house, I'll take to the streets of Isla Vista and slay every single person I see there. All those popular kids who live such lives of hedonistic pleasure while I've had to rot in loneliness for all these years. They've all looked down upon me every time I tried to go out and join them. They've all treated me like a mouse. Well, now, I will be a god compared to you. You will all be animals. You are animals, and I will slaughter you like animals. I'll be a god, exacting my retribution on all those who deserve it. And you do deserve it, just for the crime of living a better life than me. All you popular kids, you've never accepted me, and now you'll all pay for it.
It should also be noted, if you dissect this latest video by Elliot just a little bit, you'll realize a lot of the so-called scary phrases that he uses, river of blood and things of that nature, that you realize that he got this from the video games that he played, World of Warcraft, and also from watching Game of Thrones.
You will all be animals. You are animals, and I will slaughter you like animals.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them.
I hate all of you sexually active men. I hate you. I hate all of you. If I had it in my power, I would stop at nothing to reduce every single one of you to mountains of skulls and rivers of blood.
Mountains of skulls and rivers of blood.
After years of rage and jealousy and Elliot's journals threatening to commit violence on people, we finally reach his day of retribution, which took place on May 23rd and 24th, 2014. Elliot had first decided that he would go kill his stepmother, Sumaya, and his half-brother, Jazz. But that plan was foiled by Elliot's father not going on his trip. And Elliot, the only person actually in his life he didn't want to kill, was his father, Peter Rodger, the director. But instead, Elliot decided that he would go along with the plan by killing his roommates, James Hong, age 20, and George Chen, age 19. And their friend, David Wang, age 20, just happened to be visiting. And Elliot brutally stabbed them 142 times. And after he finished stabbing them, he uploads his final video, Elliot Rodger's Retribution, at 9:17 p.m. And then a couple minutes later, he emails 34 people his 137-page manifesto, My Twisted World. He emailed it to his parents, his ex-therapists, teachers, and friends that he had known. And his therapist contacted his mother. She was frantic, and she called Elliot's father, and they both raced as fast as they could to Santa Barbara. But it's to no avail. Elliot's already committed several murders, and he's in full force doing his day of retribution. Elliot heads into Santa Barbara, Isla Vista, and he heads to the Alpha Phi sorority where he planned to massacre everybody there. But he went up to the door and started banging on it, trying to get in, but no one answered. So Elliot retreats from that plan, but he sees 3 sorority girls from Delta 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 standing on the corner, and Elliot opens fire on them, killing Catherine Cooper, Veronica Weiss, and shooting 5 times Bianca DeCock, but she would survive. Elliot then got back in his black BMW and headed down the street to the IV Deli Mart, and there he got out of his car and fired repeatedly at anybody he saw. He struck multiple times student Christopher Martinez, and he would not recover. Elliot got back in his car and drove through the city of Isla Vista, shooting randomly at different people that he saw, and then he finally got into some gunplay with a sheriff's deputy who fired back at Elliot. Elliot continued and ran over several bicyclists. As he passed Little Acorn Park, 4 sheriff's deputies fired onto Elliot, striking him in his hip. Elliot would make it 1 more block and hit 1 more bicyclist as he struck the back of a Hummer SUV. And there, Elliot turned the gun around and shot himself in the mouth. The sheriff deputies approached the car and pulled Elliot out onto the ground, where he was pronounced dead at age 22. In the aftermath of Elliot's rampage, 7 people, including himself, were dead, and 13 were critically injured. There was outcries throughout the Santa Barbara community. They held vigils, and people were just devastated. There was outcry from the victims' parents and families, and they wanted new legislation for gun control. Also, for the first time ever, a parent of a mass murderer or killer had done a news interview, and that was Peter Rodger, the director. He sat down with Barbara Walters for 2 hours. So what do I think happened in the case of Elliot Rodger? I came up with 4 different parts. Number 1, Elliot was porn sick. He looked at women as nothing more than objects, as he said in his journals many times. And in pornography, everything is a staged situation where it's just sex, but from someone who's never had a relationship, from someone who has never engaged in a conversation or trying to pick up a woman for a date or for a girlfriend situation, which Elliot never did. If he's watching men and women engage in XXX hardcore pornography, and he's watching it over and over again, and copious amounts of people, thousands and millions of people, and images and videos of people having sex, it's going to have an unbelievable effect on a young teen mind like Elliot. Number 2, Elliot Rodger always wanted to be a successful writer. This journal was his great novel, that he was living the novel that he wanted to put out in the world. Could this be possible? Could Elliot Rodger have done the murders and written this novel? Millions of people have read Elliot's journal and listened to the audio of Elliot's journal. So in a way, he did become a very successful writer. But did he do it on purpose, or was this by accident? I believe the answer is yes. This is Elliot's big novel. Because why email it to over 30 people? This is Elliot's novel about the unfair nature of the world. This is his masterpiece that he enacted on the world. He was the star of his own murderous, killing novel. Number 3, Elliot grew up completely immersed in the video game underworld, and he played shoot-'em-up games like World of Warcraft and these several different games where they are so realistic and you are being trained to be a killer. Add in some of the personality defects like autism and the inability to relate to people, and you have the perfect storm to train a killer. And that's what unknowingly has been done with these video games. Elliot was a trained killer, and he had high status in the video game world as a player of these games, which is nothing but destroying and killing your opponent. Do you blame his parents? His parents did everything they could. They hired a therapist. They even hired a man and a different woman to teach Elliot small talk and to try to teach him to pick up women. He went to any school and every school they could think of. He had an enormous allowance. He had designer clothes, Hugo Boss, Gucci glasses. He even got a BMW as a college student, a very expensive luxury car. They tried everything. They were not wealthy enough to give Elliot a living, and he was a narcissist. If you want to blame Elliot's parents for anything, he was never taught any hard knocks lessons. They did not train Elliot to survive in the real world. They let him engulf himself in video games and online pornography. The parents, including Sumaya, the stepmother, including his real mother, and including Peter, his father, they were burned out by Elliot. Elliot encouraged his own mother when she was dating a very wealthy entertainment executive. Elliot begged her to marry this man because Elliot knew he was wealthy, and Elliot thought that he could finagle himself into Elliot's mother's new boyfriend's wealth. Ultimately, I don't blame the parents. Elliot's his own man. He was over 20 years old at this point. How much responsibility do they need to take? They called the police and they called for welfare checkups on Elliot. They were burned out. They were just only human. They couldn't take it anymore. They needed to get away from Elliot. And that included everybody that was in contact with Elliot. Number 4, Elliot Rodger became known as the king of the incels, involuntarily celibates. He was a legend. This movement is much larger than Elliot. There are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of men in this incel online community of men that are unable to attract a woman. And there's several social reasons behind this. Number 1, these men, they don't just want the girl next door girlfriend. No, they want the woman that they see in the hardcore XXX pornography. That's what they want. They want women just like Elliot. Elliot never went up to one single woman and asked for her number. He also wrote in his journal, he called certain women disgusting. He thought that they were gross. He only wanted supermodel looking blonde, white, blue-eyed women. Ultimately, the Elliot Rodger case, it's a much larger social problem. Women today that are on OnlyFans, selling their nude pictures, selling their own homemade pornography. You have Instagram models. You have porn models. You have TikTok models. The female experience has become a commodity. Elliot Rodger was a monster. He was a killer. He was callous. He did not think people had feelings. But ultimately, Elliot Rodger is a product of the modern day world, the internet world, where everything is abstract It's unreal to them. And that's what people were to Elliot. They did not have feelings. They were not individuals. They were human puppets with no feelings. They were merely possessions to have. That's how he looked at people. And people are much more than that. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode coming soon.